In this week's news broadcast, we bring you the latest news from the UK, where an intensive investment program has just been announced. And in the studio with me is Hans-Willem Vroom from Railgood. He will tell us about the use of longer RailFreight trains. This is RailFreight Live. Hello everyone. Let's have a look at the news of this week. Every week we take a look at the news on RailFreight, which is most notable to us. And this week that news came from the EU. New rules are in the pipeline to make the administrative procedures for the completion of infrastructure simpler. Now, this is meant to speed up the process of the completion of the TEN-T network, and a provisional agreement has been reached by the European Parliament and the European Council on Tuesday. You may have seen the TEN-T network quite often recently in the news. This is the TEN-T network. It's the core transport network of the EU. And this may have everything to do with the fact that the deadline is nearing. The deadline is 2030, which means 10 years from now. And there's quite some concern about completion of this network. Actually, a few weeks ago, the European Court of Auditors has concluded that the deadline would never be met. So perhaps the simplified procedures to make this happen is going to change the process and speed up a little bit. Congestion at the border between Kazakhstan and China is still there. Last week, we mentioned in the RailFreight Live broadcast that congestion was there because of a high and increased number of RailFreight trains and limited capacity at the terminal at the same time. Now, this is still the case, we heard. Last week, there were some restrictions for freight trains to Central Asia. These are probably still there, and currently there are also some restriction when it comes to irregular train services. We have heard, at least from Chengdu and Xi'an, that any regular service can still pass through the border, but services that are customized or test journeys have to be halted. So a lot of concern about this border point. Is the most important border point on the New Silk Road. However, there is still the border point at Erenhut, which runs into Mongolia, and the availability of capacity is there, and people recommend that you actually look into this border crossing instead. In the UK this week, there was important news that came up. Prime Minister Boris Johnson announced an intensified and speeded up version of his infrastructure spending. And this would be because the corona crisis has hit the country hard. He hopes that this version of the infrastructure spending will help the country recover. And our UK correspondent Stuart Cameron has taken a look to see what this means for RailFreight.
When Prime Minister Boris Johnson stepped up to address an audience in the West Midlands on Tuesday, he made one promise, 3 times: build, build, build. He reconfirmed pledges to improve the infrastructure of the UK, including railway developments, but critically said that he would speed up their delivery. It's that increased urgency that has benefits for the rail freight industry.
I don't think that this crisis has ended the desire or the need to move around swiftly and efficiently. The time has come when we must unite and level up in the most basic way possible, not just with HS2 and Northern Powerhouse Rail, but with better roads, better rail all round, unlocking the central Manchester bottleneck that delays services across the north. And we will build and rebuild those vital connections to every part of the UK, because now is the moment to strengthen that incredible partnership between England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland.
Promises of better connectivity were also welcomed by lobby groups, such as those seeking to re-establish a direct rail connection between Manchester and the East Midlands. Stephen Chato says quarries and aggregates companies is a sector that would benefit from a building boom and better rail connections too.
Derbyshire Quarries have told MemRap that they've invested to raise output and they're ready to go. An initial instalment of £5 billion means better, greener, faster, leading to sustainable connectivity, all central to the Matlock to Buxton and Chinley proposition.
Rail industry reaction has not been as enthusiastic. Maggie Simpson, Director General of the RailFreight Group, said that despite the £5 billion package, there could have been much more pledged for the benefit of the rail industry.
On the face of it, there's very little there for the railways. Although, of course, the £10 million to look for a solution to the very difficult issue in the centre of Manchester is welcome. More generally, though, building infrastructure is great news for rail freight. New homes, schools, offices, flood defences and roads all consume aggregates and construction materials which can be moved by rail. And whilst this sector is already recovering from the worst of the COVID lockdown, there's some way to go for traffic to get back to normal levels.
Supporting an extensive road building programme is not the best news the industry had hoped for, and it's at odds with the government's own commitment to a greener economy. However, the Prime Minister Johnson told his audience that there were wider economic challenges, and not least among them, the complexity of planning for rail and other developments, which he promised to radically change.
Why do larger procurement projects take 80% longer in the UK than in Germany? Why is HS2, transformational though it will be, going to cost us the equivalent of the GDP of Sri Lanka? And that's why the Chancellor and I have set up Project Speed, to scythe through red tape and get things done.
Political opposition has dismissed Tuesday's announcements as inadequate to deal with the scale of the economic problems facing the UK. They say that the Prime Minister merely rehashed existing plans without adding any detail. Certainly within the railway supply chain, there's a desire for more detail. Max Sugarman, spokesman for the Rail Industries Association, said his members need to see specific schemes with delivery timelines so they can plan ahead.
The Prime Minister's speech yesterday set the right tone in terms of building more infrastructure and ensuring that we build our way to an economic recovery. On behalf of rail suppliers, we would like to see a specific accelerated list of projects that we can help support to ensure that the UK is able to bounce back as quickly and effectively as possible.
Bringing more development to the north was once again a theme, but the Prime Minister said that London would remain an economic driver for the whole of the UK. Stephen Chato again.
London's growth will continue, of course, but levelling up means other regions benefit too. Unlocking Manchester to unlock the north, there's congestion into this city from all points of the compass. Resolution will transform access to the north, as well as our proposed freight, passenger and excursion traffic.
Despite promises to solve congestion in the north and press ahead with HS2, the UK railway industry wanted more from the Prime Minister's announcements. With more commitment from the government, more could be achieved. In the short term, though, RailFreight continues to deliver and, like Boris Johnson, hopes to build to economic recovery as quickly as possible. Stuart Cameron for RailFreight Live.
Yes, build. So while they're building in the UK, we're also building in the Netherlands. For a while now, railway carrier LTE has been testing longer freight trains in the Netherlands. And not only there, but to Germany. The longer freight trains are running on a track from Rotterdam to Mannheim in Germany via Venlo. Now, Jolanda Plomp from LTE was in the studio last week for a multi-model event online, and that is an event which was held by our sister publication Nieuwsblad Transport, and she was quite positive about the tests. We have some excerpts of her presentation, but before we take a look, I would like to draw the wider context with Hans-Willem Vroom. Thank you very much for coming. You're representing Rail Good, and you're also representing the development of longer freight trains. You have been on this, I know that. Can you maybe explain to us what it means to have a freight train longer than 740 meters?
Well, a freight train of 740 meters can transport about 6 trailers more per train, per direction. And that's equal also to 8 till 12 containers. So it's 3 till 6 wagons more per train. It's a boost for productivity of the rail freight transport.
And what is the current length?
690, 650 meters.
Right. Okay. And what are the advantages of that for the rail freight industry?
Well, the boost of productivity at number one. The returns of the rail freight carriers improve. That's the first advantage. The second advantage is that cost can be reduced per trailer and per container with about 10%. So that's good for modal shift. The freight market is very price elastic. So if prices decrease, quantities increase with more than 1. So if the price decreases with 10%, for example, the volumes can increase with 15%. That's modal shift. It's also a huge save of energy consumption per trailer or per container, and the railway network is used better than now.
Yeah, but when you say productivity gains, does that mean that the current trains are always running at full capacity?
No, not yet. It's a developing market. Now we are running since this year from Rotterdam to Mannheim successfully. So we proved that 740-meter trains is possible. Market starts believing now that these trains can be run successfully. And after the corona crisis, when market demand will increase again, we are convinced that the market will very fast adapt 740-meter trains.
Yeah, but the demand is there then, you would say.
The demand is there, yeah.
So LTE teamed up with the infrastructure manager, ProRail, to make these tests happen. And they explained what exactly was tested. So let's first have a look at Jolanda Plomp explaining us more about this test.
Zijn er specifieke aandachtspunten, knelpunten voor ons als vervoerder? Als we treinen rijden langer dan 740 meter. Denk aan de planningsfase, machinisten, de planners enzovoort. En leidt het tot knelpunten bij ProRail. Hebben we sporen die lang genoeg zijn, kunnen we binnenlopen en veroorzaken we geen vertraging. De algehele conclusie is dat LTE Nederlands heeft eigenlijk geen noemenswaardige problemen met het rijden van treinen van 740 meter. Tot nu toe kunnen we ook niet zeggen dat dat bij ProRail het geval is. We moeten misschien wat meer in de planningsfase moeten we bijsturen. We hebben ook zelfs 1 trein is er over Emmerich omgeleid, wat ook niet tot echt grote problemen heeft geleid. Dus voor ons is er geen reden om niet met 740 meter treinen te rijden. De operationele bevindingen. LTE Nederland heeft geen problemen ondervonden met het rijden van 740 meter treinen. We zijn er wel achter gekomen dat er op emplacementen hier en daar wel wat problemen zijn. We zijn 1 keer binnengehaald op een spoor wat te kort was, waardoor we niet meer op de Waalhaven konden aankomen, maar naar de Kijfhoek zijn omgeleid. En het enige nadeel is, RSC heeft lang genoeg, hun sporen zijn lang genoeg. Het spoor van de ECT op de Maasvlakte is maar 700 meter. Daardoor moet LTE, als hij het ECT op moet rijden, 1 wagon afrangeren en ook weer na belading en lossing weer bijrangeren. En dat geeft wel een vertraging van 90 minuten in de planning op het havenspoorgebied.
Okay, so in general, it's quite a positive conclusion, I think. Some bottlenecks remain. What is your conclusion about these tests?
Well, the tests are very successful. Let that be clear. But if demand grows for 740-meter trains, and we will drive every hour, for example, trains between Rotterdam in the Rhine-Alpine corridor, we get infrastructure bottlenecks in the Netherlands, in Germany, not only on the railway track, but also on the terminals. For example, Jolanda Plomp also already mentioned at ECT Maasvlakte, we have a length restriction of 700 meters. It demands for a small investment, and it's not large investment, and you also need buffer tracks.
What are you talking about when you say small investment?
Detection, especially detection, that you can take in the train in once with 740 meters. Now, LTE has to split up the train and do an extra shunt that costs about 90 minutes and also money. So shunting in the whole train directly is favorable.
But detection materials or what do we need?
Detection in the railway.
Yeah.
So the slot
Right.
of the train itself, that it can be detected that the railway is free again for another train.
Yeah, and it's good that you mentioned this is happening at one specific terminal. Of course, no blaming and shaming, but it's good to see that it's not just the infrastructure manager that's supposed to facilitate this. Who is supposed to pay for such an investment?
The investors on the terminals are private. The investment in the infrastructure and the public infrastructure is from the government, from the Dutch and the German government.
Yeah.
In Germany, they already have an investment program, about €1 billion for the next 10 years.
Yeah.
So it's a huge amount. In the Netherlands, we have €0 in budget. So the ministry should give probably the budget to extend the infrastructure.
Yeah.
It's upgrades. It's only small upgrades. At Venlo, for example, €30 million, not only for 740
What needs
meters.
to happen in Venlo?
Yeah, extra tracks have to be built, and also tracks of 740 meters, because Venlo is a border point. So you have a switch between the German and the Dutch timetable, and sometimes trains are too early or too late, and then they have to wait till there is a slot available.
Right.
You cannot take those trains aside on the Brabant route, for example. So you have to drive your train in the path that is allocated to the rail carrier.
And that was not a problem popping up in this test?
No. The interesting thing is on the Brabant route, which is a very intensively used passenger route, the trains were perfect. They didn't differ from normal freight trains. In Germany, they won 1 hour between Venlo and Mannheim. That's about 500 kilometers, 400, 500 kilometers, and on the way back the same. So in Germany, the slots can be speed up, but in the Netherlands, they are really good, and the trains are driving on their line.
Yeah. So extra tracks, terminal investment. Are there any other bottlenecks in the Netherlands that we need to
the
work
biggest
on?
bottleneck is the border agreements between DB Netz and ProRail, the infrastructure manager regulations. Those should be skipped. They're a real barrier, and in practice, it's already shown you can drive the trains, but in the regulations there are length restrictions. On Venlo, for example, 690 meters. On Emmerich, on the Beta route, 690 meters. On Bentheim, 590 meters. But on Bentheim, we already drive 680 meters. And towards Poland, 635.
Yeah. So if you say skipped, what do you suggest?
Well, don't agree those rules again. Quite simple.
Okay, just erase them.
Exactly.
And that's the no money involved, no investment
no money
needed.
involved.
Sounds
Regulations.
quite simple.
Deregulate.
Yeah.
Yes.
So if it's that simple, why is it not happening?
It's old behavior, culture in the railway sector. Everything is difficult. So think in solutions, don't think in problems.
Yeah, but is it? We named a lot of advantages of 740-meter trains. Are there also people with objections?
Yeah,
Disadvantages?
the regulator people at infra management, of course, have their objections. But in the case it is that you have the buffers. If you have the buffers and you drive your trains in the slots, there is no problem. So with green waves, you will not displace passenger trains. So you have to avoid a knock-on problem. The passenger timetable cannot be adjusted on those trains. But it's not different from other trains because the realization, the punctuality of the 740 meter trains is not different from 650 or 600 meter trains.
But the punctuality is not that good.
The punctuality of the trains from Rotterdam to Germany were very, very good.
Okay, so that shouldn't be a problem.
100% in time even.
Okay, now on the test results.
On the test results.
But in general, freight is known to be less punctual.
Freight is dynamic, exactly.
Yeah.
Passenger train services in the Netherlands have, for example, 3 minutes delay is already above the norm, the standard. And in rail freight traffic, it's 30 minutes.
Yeah, and is that when the train is longer, would the punctuality then be less?
No, I don't think so, because if you have a longer train, there's focus on the train.
Yeah.
The engine driver knows that he has to realize his timetable, the traffic manager also.
Yeah, so that shouldn't be a concern for passenger traffic.
That shouldn't be a concern for passenger traffic, but we need those investments in buffering tracks of 740 meters. That's key.
Yeah, okay. Are there any other parties that could contribute, except for ProRail and the government and the investments?
Yeah, the legislators, because those trains need the same priority as passenger trains, so they should be stopped. It should be realized that they can drive in green waves. And now in the Dutch law, for example, in capacity allocation, freight trains don't have priority. So if there's a conflict, passenger trains have priority, and then the train has to stop. If you don't have a track a siding of 740 meters, you have a problem.
Yeah.
So give them the same priority. And it's also important that the Netherlands and Germany and Switzerland and Austria and Italy cooperate really good together.
Yeah.
So if you have an investment program in the Netherlands, you should have the same investment program in the corridor on the German and on the Swiss side. The Swiss will be finish their 740 meter programs at the end of this year. The Germans delay a little bit and the Netherlands have to speed up.
Okay, so we have the Swiss on top.
Exactly,
and then
as usual.
The Germans, and then the Dutch are in the end, or is there anyone or any other country that's even doing less?
Yeah, Poland, for example.
Yeah.
In Denmark, you can already drive 835 meters. So between Maschen and Denmark, Pelburg, it's already driven since 2012. So 740 meters is not the limit. In France, they already drove trains with 1,000 meters and 1,500 meters. And in the Anglo-Saxon world, it's quite normal to drive 3-kilometer trains or 3.6 in the US.
We're far away along. So we, in the Netherlands, just to explain to those who are not so familiar, we have two corridors that we're involved in. The Rhine-Alpine corridor, which runs from the Netherlands all the way up to Italy. And we have the North Sea Baltic corridor, which runs from the Netherlands to Poland. And those are important corridors for the Netherlands because in some way we should benefit from the fact that everybody's working together. Does that work for this procedure as well?
Yes, exactly. The North Sea Baltic is an emerging corridor, not only towards China, but also towards Poland. The traffic between Germany, Netherlands, Belgium, UK and Poland is really big. It's all industrial goods and consumption goods. Now a lot of those cargoes are on the truck and we want modal shift. And for that modal shift, we need 740 meters and interoperability of the infrastructure. 740 meters is part of the 10T specifications.
Yeah.
So we should speed up and realize it before 2030.
Yeah.
The ambition should be realize 740 meters in the Rhine-Alpine corridor at latest in 2025. And in the corridor North Sea Baltic 2030 maximum.
Yeah. And we just heard about simplified procedures. Is that something that would benefit this process as well?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
It's all the same.
Yeah.
It's all the same. It doesn't matter which corridor you take.
Yeah. Now, these tests were carried out in exceptional circumstances, of course, because we have the corona crisis and there was a lot less passenger traffic on the rails. Furthermore, LT was the only operator doing this. And LT has also mentioned this during the presentation they gave last week. So let's have a look at what she has to say about that.
Op het moment dat nou, jullie zijn de enige of een van de weinigen die nu met deze lange treinen rijden. Als er straks meer vervoerders wellicht daarmee ook aan de slag gaan. Verwacht je dan meer problemen en wat voor problemen precies?
Nou ja, wij hebben deze treinen, overigens zeg maar per week 1 trein met langer dan 700 meter gereden. Dat is goed gelopen met hier en daar wat bijsturing. Vanuit onze kant, vanuit de kant van ProRail. Ik denk, zoals ik in het filmpje ook zei, dat op bepaalde punten de infra nog niet helemaal op orde is. Dus stel dat alle vervoerders 2-3 treinen van deze lengte gaan rijden op een dag, dan komen we wel in de problemen met de opstellen voordat we kunnen inrijden. Je rijdt met een elektrische lok, dan moet je een diesel ervoor zetten en dan zou je daar wel problemen kunnen krijgen. Daar zijn we ons van bewust, ProRail en LTE. En daar is een plan uitgedacht, tenminste daar zijn ze mee bezig om in elk geval te zorgen dat we er in de toekomst wel klaar voor zijn.
En heb je het idee dat ook de terminals er klaar voor zijn? Je noemde ECT, dat ging nog niet helemaal goed, maar we hebben natuurlijk veel meer railterminals in Nederland. Zijn er veel plekken zijn er veel terminals die een dergelijke lange trein van 740 meter kunnen accommoderen?
Mijn bevindingen met deze proef is dat alleen de ECT op dit moment die mogelijkheid niet heeft. Maar ook daar zou dan aangewerkt kunnen worden om die mogelijkheid wel te bieden.
Yeah, so she was quite positive, but then when you ask if this was actually real life, I somehow feel that she changes position. Do you think these tests show a misguided picture of what it could be in reality?
No, I don't think so, because I already asked engine drivers, locomotive drivers, can you drive those trains in the slots? And they said it's no difference between a 600-meter train and a 740-meter train. And why? It's quite simple. The locomotives that pull those trains, the Vectrons, the trucks and the Baureihe 189, they have a pulling power of about 2,200 till 2,700 tons. The trains which were in the pilot now had a gross weight of 2,200 tons. So the train has the acceleration characteristics to drive in the slots. The only thing you need to have is focus at the engine drivers and focus at the traffic control with this number of trains. It's a limited number of trains. If you drive every hour on a train, it's a different picture. Then you need the buffer tracks, and we don't have enough buffer tracks at this moment.
Yeah.
So investment program is important. Yes.
Yeah. But how many operators are there in the Netherlands? Do you know that by the top of your head?
RailFreight carriers which are interested at the railgood side, almost 50%. And the bigger one, DB Cargo also, I think. And the intermodal operators, many are very, very interested. But last week I also spoke to an intermodal operator who's active on France, on Kale. They are interested, but they have also there a last mile challenge.
Yeah.
The terminal and also the sidings before the yards before the terminal are a challenge.
Yeah.
Otherwise you have to split up, and that costs a lot of time and also money.
Yeah. So how far do you think we are from operating this on a daily basis?
Well, next year we'll continue driving these trains. The capacity will be allocated also by DB Netze this summer. LTE had to overwin a lot of barriers. But also other carriers are already interested. So I think within 1 or 2 years, many carriers will drive 740-meter trains, especially in the Dutch-German Rhine-Alpine corridor.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe we invite you next year again and we see how it's going. Thank you very much for joining us. And with that, we've come to an end of this week's RailFreight Live. Please like us on our YouTube channel or subscribe, and follow our website railfreight.com to see the latest news. We see you next week. Goodbye.